It was during 2018 that I made a video exploring the Deadliest Yautja across the novels and comics before crowning my champion. Since then, however, there have been a plethora of powerful predators that have made it onto the pages of some new and exciting stories. Over the last year, I have meticulously scoured these texts to discover that some very talented authors have introduced us fans to a host of lethal hunters. I'm Schizofenik, an avid Predator fan since 1987 who is determined to find the Deadliest Yautja amongst these fictional characters. After deciphering the deadliest individuals from the movies and video games, I now turn my attention to the literary universe. After rereading the entire series of comics and novels, I was reminded of the rich tapestry of stories and characters that the Yautja universe possesses. Although identifying the most formidable hunters 5 years ago was challenging enough, the task was made harder in 2023 with an array of new characters making debuts. As a result, my shortlist has become more expansive and I have had to be tougher in my criteria in order to narrow it down. Therefore, I will start with some candidates that I considered but ultimately ruled out due to a lack of information. Firstly, I gave strong consideration to the Elder Predator who made a cameo appearance in Yvonne Navarro's short story Sly Dark in the Daylight within the Eyes of the Demon anthology. This story depicted a serial killer Yautja who was slaughtering the innocent residents of a suburban neighbourhood. As deadly as this predator was, it was easily defeated by a massive elder in close quarters combat. Although this impressive delineation could suggest that this elder is one of the most formidable predators ever written, there is just not enough information here and I have to rule him out, but he is certainly worth a mention. Another individual that I considered but ultimately disqualified was the one known as Calacta, who appeared in Tim Lebbon's Rage War trilogy. Described as a predator king, this being was known to be at the very pinnacle of the Yautja hierarchy, overseeing numerous clans. Again, the details on his hunting exploits and prowess were sparse, so I was left with no choice but to eliminate him from my top 5. Otherwise, he could have been in first place. I also ruled out the gigantic female leader of the Widow clan, known as Hashori, who also featured in Tim Lebbon's Rage War trilogy. Aside from being very large and taking pleasure in torturing her victims, there was limited information on Hashori, so I was forced to cross her off my list. Regretfully, I also have to rule out the individual known as Cleopatra, who first appeared in James A. Moore and Mark Morris's Stalking Shadows before entering the gaming universe in the popular Hunting Grounds. Although this formidable female Yautja destroyed Alan Schaefer's special team of predator hunters, her most impressive achievement was perhaps defeating Dutch himself. After decimating his team, she would turn her attention to Schaefer and had him beat after pinning him to the wall with her net gun. She would ultimately strike down the few remaining survivors with her plasma caster before nonchalantly freeing Dutch, then disappearing from sight. Her disregard for Schaefer as deadly prey is arguably her most frightening trait. Clearly, Cleopatra is a deadly Yautja, however defeating Dutch and his team is just not enough information when compared to some of the others who have made it onto my list. With some high-ranking individuals ruled out due to a lack of information, I want to give some honourable mentions to hunters who very nearly made it onto my list but were eliminated for various reasons. Chained to Life and Death documents the final hunt of a revered and respected elder who was said to have slain more xenomorphs than any other Yautja across his illustrious career. However, as I alluded to earlier, this elder predator is past his best, as Schultz writes. More painful than the terrible acid burns that corroded his agonized flesh was the grim truth they revealed. Nothing stays the best forever. For the first time, his reflexes had failed him. Ironically, the Elder is killed by the very prey he was famous for slaying in an end that he had not hoped for. In a society where all must improve their position within the pack or die, the pressure from below never ends. There may have been a time when this predator would have topped my list. Unfortunately, we can only judge him upon what we know for sure, and the fact is, he is not at the peak of his powers. My next honourable mention goes to a predator that achieved 4th place on my previous list of Deadliest Yautja in the literary universe. This is of course the eponymous Bad Blood from Evan Dawkins' classic comic. The story depicted a predator that was so deadly that it actually hunted and even cannibalized its own kind. Free from any Yautja honor code, the Bad Blood arrived in New Jersey to wreak havoc on literally anything that moved, whether they were armed or otherwise. This psychopathic hunter adopted the most gruesome killing methods, as he preferred to get up close and personal with his prey, utilizing bladed weapons instead of plasma technology. The Bad Blood would go on to annihilate a CIA task force before defeating a Yautja enforcer who was sent to destroy him. With his insatiable lust for blood unfulfilled, the Bad Blood would continue his reign of terror until he was finally gunned down by Mandy Greaves, the last remaining member of the CIA unit. Another hunter who is worth a mention is Akale from Linda D. Addison's Proving Ground within the Eyes of the Demon anthology. This female adjutant was the granddaughter of an elder clan leader who died of old age, and as a result was elected the new clan leader by the council after successfully completing their trials. Said to have an extensive trophy collection, this individual's deadly traits seem to run in her bloodline. Unfortunately, with not enough information on her deadly exploits, I cannot place her on my top 5. Another deadly hunter worth mentioning is Adelantado from Stephen L. Sears' short story Isla Matanzas, which appeared in the Ultimate Prey anthology. This clan leader arrived on a small xenomorph-infested island during the 1700s with 2 other clan members. Named after Spanish nobles who were in service of their kings during the Middle Ages, Adelantado used strategic intelligence to fight his adversaries but proved highly durable as well, surviving several onslaughts from the deadly aliens. Despite this, Adelantado and his 2 clan members would team up with a group of female African warriors to slay the aliens in an epic battle. During these encounters, he even slew one xenomorph with his bare hands and another with his wrist blade simultaneously. It may be hard to fathom that none of these aforementioned predators have made it onto my top 5. Therefore, one would have to deduce that the caliber of hunters on my actual list is nothing short of awe-inspiring. My 5th place individual has been honoured with a series of Thirst for a Predator in my Deadly series. This hunter is the first to displace a former entry, the first to hunt 3 Bad Bloods simultaneously, and the first female hunter on any of my top 5s. In 2022, Kim May introduced readers to Akili, a female enforcer who was tasked with hunting 3 lawbreaker Yautja on a desert planet where she caused them to crash land and make their last stand. This deadly trio were charged with some heinous intergalactic crimes, but most notably the murders of unarmed females and young, an act strictly forbidden by the Yautja Honor Code. Accompanied by her predator hound Zave, Akili would arm herself with some traditional weapons before embarking on this deadly hunt. What this text makes abundantly clear is the magnitude and difficulties of hunting Bad Bloods. May describes some of these challenges through Akili as she writes, Akili finally understood why the enforcers hated hunting their kind. It wasn't because of any distaste for the assignment, it was because the prey in question had the same technology and training that they did. Their usual tricks wouldn't work. Anytime prey was intelligent enough to know the limitations of their scanners, they instantly became a much more deadly species. This exact peril was elucidated as one of Akili's lawbreakers took a vantage position and tried to snipe her as she searched for her targets on the open terrain. A bright flash of light zipped past her and struck the ground to her left. Blasted chunks of rock rained down on them. Sniper. Akili, however, would showcase her superior experience and take cover in a ravine before spotting her attacker's heat signature as he knelt on the ridge. This female enforcer would valiantly run towards her antagonist whilst varying her path to avoid his plasma blasts before hurling her smart disc at him and slicing his throat. She would finish her target off by firing her plasma caster at his chest, then taking his head as confirmation of the kill. With her first target eliminated, Akili would use her topographic view to head towards an extinct nearby volcano. Knowing that the caves and lava tubes would provide good defensive positions, she anticipated her target's presence in these areas. Achille would use her intelligence and knowledge of the terrain to anticipate her attacker's position and take defensive cover as a result. Ultimately, it was within these caves that she engaged her second target, a temperamental hunter named Twakesi. After evading his smart discs, Achille would wedge his weapon further into the wall, nullifying any subsequent offense with that tool. She reached up and snatched the disc from above her head. Instead of stopping it, she pushed it further until it struck the stone behind her and was embedded so deep that the auto recall wouldn't work. If he wanted it back, he'd have to come and get it. Moments like this truly exhibit Achilles' combat prowess and validates her place on my list. Eventually, she would outmaneuver Twakesi but pass on the opportunity to destroy him with her plasma caster, preferring a close quarters kill so that he would know exactly who killed him and how. He stood in the spot where she'd attacked, staring into the fissure. It would have been so easy to fire her plasma caster and be done with it, but that wouldn't be as satisfying as sinking her blades deep into his flesh. Achille wanted Twakesi to know it was her that ended his life. Eventually, Achille would get her wish and slay Twakesi with her dagger and wrist blades in a close quarters duel. Achille caught his wrist blades with hers and twisted the fist to the side. The blow he'd intended to hit her vulnerable torso with had completely missed instead. His mandibles flared in anger, the outburst made him pause, giving Achille an opening. She thrust her dagger into his lower abdomen and twisted the blade before pulling out. Phosphorescent green blood seeped from the wound. "How could you?" Achille said. "They were unarmed females and young." Twakesi fell to his knees. He clutched his wound in his gut. "I don't regret killing them." "Then I don't regret killing you," Achille said. She kicked him over and used her dagger to sever his head. With her second kill achieved, Achille would move on to her most challenging target, Dakduade, a formidable hunter that she was once proud to have trained herself. After unsuccessfully searching the surrounding areas, Achille would head back to her ship where she would find Dakduade awaiting her within the vessel. It was here where the two engaged in a skillful and brutal encounter with their smart discs until Achille proved victorious by impaling his windpipe with her wrist blades. With this act, Achille had slain 3 lethal bad bloods in one hunt, establishing herself as one of the deadliest Yautja in the literary universe. What was even more impressive than this is that Dakduade was her own son. She forced herself to watch as he started to suffocate. It didn't matter how much her maternal side wanted to look away, she had to bear witness to this. Achille used her smart disc to bring his suffering to a quick end. She knelt beside him and let the tears flow freely. What Kim May reinforces in Bitter Hunt is the importance of the honor code. Nothing seems to take precedence over their strict rules of engagement, proving that blood is not thicker than water when it comes to Yautja culture. There is no greater dishonor than becoming a bad blood, where even family takes second place to honor, no matter how painful it might be. We have witnessed deadly Yautjas that will hunt humans, slay xenomorphs, and even destroy their own kind. However, at number 4, we have a predator that can actually defeat the deadliest and most uncivilized of beasts. AVP Civilized Beasts introduces readers to a heavily armoured elite Yautja named Smiley. Living upon an unnamed planet alongside marooned human colonists, this predator belongs to a clan who specialise in hunting xenomorphs. From the offset, we witness Smiley's prowess as a deadly hunter as he saves 2 humans from the jaws of a xenomorph. It isn't until later on, however, that we realise just how formidable Smiley is. During a xenomorph attack, Smiley's entire clan are killed, which sends this Yautja on a murderous rampage. Smiley decimates a series of xenomorphs single-handedly as he avenges his fallen brothers. Yet his wrath does not stop there. Smiley continues to obliterate a group of highly trained yet illegal synthetics who wish to kill in order to conceal their existence. Nevertheless, this predator is not on my list because he defeated some xenomorphs and synthetics. Many other Yautja can also boast similar achievements. Smiley makes my top 5 because he manages to slay arguably the most dangerous of xenomorph castes, the monstrous Queen. As he is ambushed by the terrifying ogre, writer Mike Kennedy cuts away to the human characters escaping the planet. This leads us to believe that Smiley met an honourable yet untimely demise at the talons of the Queen. However, the comic's penultimate page illustrates a battered and bloody Smiley missing his right eye while standing victorious on top of a hill. We are left in suspense as to how Smiley defeated such a powerful adversary, but there are some subtle clues to his methods of engagement. Some readers theorise that Smiley's clenched fist, missing eye and bloody body point to a battle in hand-to-hand combat. If this is so, then Smiley could actually be my number 1 Deadliest Yautja in the literary universe. However, I can only go on the details of the text, and since we do not see these events unfold, I cannot be entirely sure that Smiley defeated the Queen with nothing more than his bare hands. Furthermore, I find it highly unlikely that any Yautja could defeat a Xenomorph Queen without the use of any weapons. We must also consider that Smiley did possess a plasma caster during this battle, and it is more likely that he defeated his adversary with the use of this weapon. As a result, Smiley remains in 4th place. Hunting alien prey on uncharted planets is impressive, but some predators will travel light years in pursuit of their quarry. At number 3, we have a truly intergalactic hunter with an obsession. In the world of the comics, his desired prey is so advanced that it can bring both life and death. Just like his namesake from Herman Melville's novel Moby Dick, Ahab is hellbent on hunting a white giant. In this case, however, it's the technologically advanced Malakak, also known as the Engineers. The inception of this Yautja's obsession commences whilst on a hunt as he witnesses a cave painting of Engineers being worshipped as gods. From this point on, Ahab begins his relentless pursuit, which lasts over a century. Additionally, Ahab's deadly exploits predate his fascination with the Engineers, as he had already established himself as an elite hunter. For instance, his durability is exhibited on numerous occasions. Firstly, the marks on his leg reveal the gruesome details of a historic hunt where he battled a bloodthirsty bipedal beast. Further to this, Ahab lost an eye whilst hunting a group of red-skinned four-armed primitive humanoid creatures. Despite this horrific injury, Ahab had sense enough to utilize stealth tactics, butchering his hulking enemy with his wrist blades, then claiming its skull as a trophy. However, we truly witness Ahab's skill as an experienced hunter when he sees Galgo Helder carrying an engineer weapon and follows him on board the Perseus. It is here when Ahab utilizes his intelligence to kill Galgo's teammate Piper, who was trying to capture the Predator. Furthermore, he outsmarts Galgo, who uses Higgins as bait to trap the Predator in the airlock and blast him into space. Unfortunately, his cunning plan backfires when Ahab jumps from the rafters and forces Galgo to help him locate an engineer. Attached by a laser link, the two are forced to work together and develop a unique bond, slaying a variety of deadly beasts, which include bull-like behemoths. It is during a second fight with one of these creatures that Ahab requires the aid of his human comrade. Losing his harpoon spear, Ahab is left helpless as he is on the verge of being crushed by the monster. In the nick of time, Galgo intercepts and slays the creature with Ahab's weapon. This moment represents a newfound trust between the two protagonists and is symbolically shown through the gesture of Ahab returning the engineer weapon to Galgo. Therefore, Ahab demonstrates a high level of intelligence and collaborative skills, however his toughness is elucidated when he finally battles the opponent he's been desperately seeking, the menacing engineer. Standing at a towering 9 feet tall and weighing several hundred pounds of solid muscle, the engineers are imposing adversaries and even dwarf most Yautja. However, they are far from being all brawn and no brains, as they possess some of the most advanced technology and genetic engineering capabilities in the entire galaxy. This lethal combination makes them the ultimate prey, which Ahab discovers firsthand in a ferocious fight. Despite being shot by the engineer gun and plasma caster, the Malakak tackles Ahab and commences pummeling him. Ahab showcases his toughness during this conflict as he manages to hold his own in hand-to-hand combat against his towering tormentor. Ultimately, the engineer gets the upper hand, inflicting a variety of damage on Ahab, which includes launching him against the Perseus, tearing out some of his dreadlock appendages before breaking his arm and leg. Now on the brink of death, Ahab fires a series of flechettes, then in a last-ditch effort launches his harpoon at the engineer's chest. Surprisingly, this proves insufficient in killing the Colossus as it removes the harpoon and heads for a seemingly defeated Yautja who activates his self-destruct device. Just like Captain Ahab from the novel Moby Dick, we think this hunter is about to be killed by the creature he relentlessly pursued. In a fortunate twist of fate, however, Ahab is saved for a second time by Galgo, who shoots the engineer dead with his own weapon. After exploding the ship, Ahab proudly claims the most sought-after trophy in a historic Yautja moment. Even though Ahab fulfills his ambition, his hunger for the hunt is not satisfied, but to the contrary, his thirst for blood intensifies as he leaves Galgo to go on a killing spree, hunting a variety of deadly alien prey. In addition to his aforementioned traits, Ahab is highly resourceful, building xenomorph traps and also incredibly protective of those he cares about. This side of his character is exhibited when he returns the favour to Galgo by saving his life on several occasions. His heroic acts include rescuing Galgo and Angela from voracious pig-like creatures as well as xenomorphs. In time, Ahab's xenomorph kill count multiplies considerably, culminating in an epic battle in the comic's climax. Essentially, I feel that there are two more conflicts that fully cement Ahab's reputation as a deadly predator. Firstly, he fights yet another engineer in a head-on encounter before entering a no-holds-barred fight to the death against a champion Yautja from another clan. Eventually, Ahab prevails against his antagonist by severing the hornhead predator's arm before standing victorious over his fallen foe, thus proving his worth to his Yautja brethren. Combined with his assistance in slaying the xenomorphs, this victory earns Ahab a place in the Tartarus clan. Finally, Ahab decides to leave with his own kind and receives the engineer gun from Galgo as a parting gift for his assistance. In my original top 5 list made in 2018, I did not have a single female Yautja featuring. However, 5 years later, I have 2. I was initially introduced to how deadly female Yautja could be in Stefani and Steve Perry's 1994 classic, AVP Prey. In one such chapter of this book, the authors described a time when a young Dashande was knocked sprawling after colliding with a female Yautja just minding its own business and going about her way. Since the popularity of the female hunters in the 2020 video game Hunting Grounds, Yautja authors have clearly made a very concerted effort to introduce and expand the lore of female warriors, as so many lethal individuals have made it onto the pages of some recent texts. Despite often altering the concept of females being larger than the males, the females of the species have often remained deadlier than the males. This is perfectly elucidated in my second place entry with a truly formidable hunter. Weston Ox and Yvonne Navarro's 2022 novel Rift War tells the story of an initiation hunt upon LV-363, a planet that is scarred with deep rifts and seeded with xenomorph eggs by the Yautja known as RN. When the 3 hunting parties of 4 arrive, it is revealed that each consists of 3 juveniles that are led by a formidable hunting captain. These captains include the hulking former battlemaster and now elite captain Nightap, the overconfident but incredibly fast Tusa, and finally, our focus Yautja, the smaller fearless female named Katol. Despite her physical disadvantages, it is revealed that Katol possesses immense cunning and had previously defeated the aforementioned captains in numerous hunts. Remaining hyper-alert at all times, Katol is the first to notice humans on this planet. Forever a knowledgeable teacher to her students, Katol offers them valuable lessons for the hunt, which include conquering fear, not leaving a fellow Yautja behind, dealing with a facehugger, and killing a xenomorph. She could have killed it with barely a breath. Instead, she dodged low and to her left so that the inexperienced Xeno simply swept past her, swiping at the empty air where she had been. She wanted her unblooded to watch her kill this hardmeat, their first viewing of a battle between a Yautja and a Xeno. On a different playing field, it would likely be able to kill its targets and go on to bigger and better, learning as it grew. Here, however, it faced a seasoned Yautja hunt captain. There was no need to draw it out. Indeed, doing so would set a bad example for her wards, who might have a sense that it was okay to make a game of killing. That was far from the truth and could cost them their lives. The apex of its jump put her fully extended combi stick squarely into the centre of the Xeno's chest area, deep into its acid reservoir. Reflex made the creature extend its neck to snap at her before it squared, and its acid blood sprayed around the combi stick. However, a juvenile alien is not the only xenomorph Catol skillfully dispatches in this book, as she slaughters a whole host of other more formidable casts in a variety of ways. These include skillfully slaying the beast with deadly weapons and even her bare hands. She had taken out several Xenos herself in a deadly spin of combi stick and wrist blades, slicing and carving up the creatures with barely an effort. He had to admit that she was among the best hunters that he had ever seen. She let it snap at her again, then gripped its main upper and lower jaws in her gloved hands. Grunting as her muscles bunched, she began to force its jaws apart. Between the plasma rounds, Catol weaved among their opponents, her extended combi stick and longer wrist blades a blur, anticipating the moves of both the attacking creatures and her two youngbloods. By the end of the ordeal, it is revealed that Catol has killed hundreds of xenomorphs. Perhaps the deadliest alien caste Catol slew was the Riftwing xenomorph hybrid known as the Xenowing, a larger flying insectoid version of the voracious beasts. Already having sealed Nightap's grisly fate, one of these creatures attacked Catol in an epic encounter, as you can read here. With long front claws hooked under the armour on both shoulders, it lifted her as though she weighed no more than a Jivening. Unexpected pain spiked through her shoulder muscles and Catol hissed, but there was no time to dwell on it. If this creature took her up too far, the fall might kill her, or worse, leave her to a fate like Nightap's. With her arms free, it took barely an instant to reach up with her wrist blades and shear off the legs holding her captive. Her attacker screeched and the fall was minimal, 20 knocks at the most. She went into a crouch. Abruptly, she sprang straight at it. With impossible speed, a sort of second mouth shot out of its face. When he thought she would run right into its maw, she dropped and slid feet first under its massive head. The bite missed and the hunter twisted beneath it, bringing up a short weapon that suddenly extended into a long rod with a sharp edge, hook spear on the end. She thrust it upward through the centre of the beast's neck, then yanked sideways with both hands until the weapon came free. Therefore, it is here that we finally understand that Catol is deadlier than the arrogant Nightap, who was defeated by one of these creatures. In fact, with Nightap's death, Catol adopts the mantle of senior captain upon this hunt. In addition to slaying deadly xenomorph castes, Catol is forced to do battle with her own kind on numerous occasions as she battles some other Yautja who have conspired against her. The newly blooded Yautja youth look down at her with disdain. "Step aside, Catol. I am your equal now." Catol hit Tasika on the side of his face so hard, he flew off his feet and landed 4 meters down the corridor. Before he could rise, she was standing next to him. She slammed a heavy, booted foot down on his chest shield and pinned him to the floor. He began to push himself up, but suddenly her wrist blades, notched with curved hooks and twice as long as those allotted to younger Yautja, were pushing against his throat. Then she laughed at him. "When you are as fast as me, when you are wise enough to train the young, and when you have made as many kills as me, then you might be my equal." Despite this humiliating defeat, Tasika did not learn his lesson and was subsequently killed by Catol when he challenged her again. She would later add another predator kill to her list with the death of the Yautja known as Vike, who she impaled with her combi stick. Then she spun, twisting the stick out of the bad blood's hand. She bounded forward so quickly that Vike's own momentum made him fall forward. Before he could regain his balance and stand, she thrust her combi stick forward and down at an angle through Vike's neck. The power of the blow pushed the combi stick's blade all the way through his torso and out his lower back. Perhaps saddened by the death of the young Yautja, she realised who had turned him against her and set her sights on the Yautja that had been orchestrating the mutiny against her all along. This would be her toughest challenge and very own brother, Arwen. Her siblings' disdain towards her came to fruition during their own initiation hunt when the kill-hungry Arwen refused to leave the battlefield against his sister's better advice. With no choice left, Katol reluctantly left her bloodthirsty brother behind, an act strictly forbidden by the Yautja Honor Code. However, it gets worse. Katol never became a youngblood on this hunt, yet claimed the kills of her brother and went straight to the rank of hunter, achieving 18 kills on another mission soon after. Although Katol was acquitted for owning up to her actions by a Yautja court, she always carried the heavy burden of these events. But the effects on Arwen's life were significant, as he received a funeral and was dead to his parents even after returning home years later. Inevitably, the two siblings would settle their differences with one another in mortal combat. Armed with a double-bladed combi stick that possesses electrified ends, Arwen was considered a formidable hunter that could rival Katol. During their epic exchange, the two inflicted significant wounds upon each other with specialized fighting techniques. He shifted on the ground and brought his stick down. She moved, but not fast enough. He caught her in the leg with the end of the blade. Electricity shot up the limb, deadening it as the pain and pleasure receptors were overloaded. She captured his wrist and bent it forward until it pinched the nerve, bringing a scream out of him. Katol concentrated on his captured wrist and pressed hard until she heard it snap. However, no clear winner could be determined as the fight was interrupted by 3 Xeno wings. Although Katol managed to slay her tormentor, Arwen could not fight off the 2 that attacked him and ultimately died a horrific death. Saddened by her brother's death, Katol vowed to return to Yautja Prime in order to set the record straight with the elders regarding her dishonourable past. Despite this, I feel that she more than made up for it with her exploits during this hunt, which saw Katol earn 2nd place on this elite list of deadly Yautja. As impressive and epic as Katol's tale is, there are some predators whose stories are the stuff of legend. Still to this day, Stefani and Steve Perry's version of the modern classic AVP Prey remains my most beloved piece of Yautja literary fiction and also contains one of the deadliest predators ever written. When discussing Dashande, I always refer to the novelisation of Randy Stradley's classic comic book series because I feel that the novel is the superior text and possesses far greater descriptions of this Yautja's deadliness. Aptly dubbed by the humans as Broken Tusk, this individual's actual name Yiyindi is even more fitting as it means Brave One. More commonly, however, he is known by his Yautja nickname Dashande, meaning different knife, as yet another reference to his broken lower left tusk. This predator proudly sports his disfigurement as a reminder to others that he is the only Yautja to have slain a xenomorph unarmed. His trophy cabinet also tells a story containing 6 of the 50 xenomorph skulls that he has claimed, as well as the skull of a queen. It was said that during his initiation hunt, Dashande became blooded as the only predator to have killed 2 xenomorphs. Moreover, Dashande would deliberately handicap himself to spears and wrist blades during subsequent hunts, as a plasma caster would be too easy. During the story of Prey, Dashande takes his young clan on a xenomorph hunt in order to turn them into blooded warriors. It is during training that one of his students, Tashindi, challenges his authority but is quickly disciplined in brutal fashion. However, pugnacious youngbloods were the least of Dashande's worries during this hunt. Very early on, their plans were interrupted by Dr. Revna, who witnesses the predators exiting their ship. In a complete panic, he flies his hoverbike straight at the Yautja craft, which explodes in a fireball, launching burning debris at Dashande. Believing him to be dead, his Yautja students leave him behind to extract revenge on the humans. Ironically, however, it is the humans who take Dashande in where the extent of his injuries are revealed. A concussion. 4 cracked ribs and extensive contusions in the dorsal region. Despite this, Dushanbe recovers enough to save his human carer Miriam Revna from Tashindi in a brutal fight as he impales him with his bladed staff. Furthermore, Dushanbe soldiers on, displaying his incredible durability, as Perry writes. He ached all over and at least 2 of his ribs were broken, but he put the pain aside for now. Moments after this, Dushanbe is surrounded by xenomorphs and Perry describes the events as follows. There were 4. They circled him. The first darted forward, teeth chittering. The outer jaws spread wide, the smaller teeth on the inner rod gaped. Dushanbe burned it, the hollow thump of the weapon exploding the drone's gut into bloody bits. Without turning, Dushanbe took out the second and the third. He shot one and used the spear in Hiju position to disembowel the other. The final drone screeched, turned, and ran. This battle fully showcases Dushanbe's dexterity with his weapons, using his burner and combi stick to dispatch 4 xenomorphs simultaneously. Another moment that further elucidates Dushanbe as an expert xenomorph killer is when he battles them whilst climbing a transmitter. After eliminating 2 of the savage beasts, Dushanbe verges on the brink of death as he tries to fight the horde off with one hand gripping the collapsing structure. Just before he meets his demise, Miriam Revna and Michiko Noguchi lower their helicopter, which he manages to grab onto in vain as it veers out of control and crashes. Despite a second near-fatal accident, Dushanbe survives yet again and in an act of respect carries the deceased Dr. Miriam Revna in his arms. From this moment onwards, Dushanbe joins forces with Michiko Noguchi and together they slay an entire nest of xenomorphs. However, it is the fights that involve Dushanbe that are the most impressive. In actual fact, Steve and Stefani Perry present us with one of the most beautifully described Yautja battles from Michiko Noguchi's point of view. This occurs when Dushanbe and Noguchi are ambushed by 12 xenomorphs. The Perrys write, several of the bugs streamed from behind the shed and toward Broken Tusk. He stepped into battle without hesitation. Too many of them. 10, 12. She aimed at one of the bugs, and it was dead before she fired. She took aim again, and again, her target had fallen already. She took a step back, transfixed by the swift movements of the giant warrior. Here was no inexperienced novice. Every step was measured, every strike timed and sure. Within the space of a few seconds, most of the bugs were down, dead, or dying. She had enough training to recognize a master when she saw one. This one's skill had been gained in battle against deadly enemies. Broken Tusk whirled and jabbed, crouched and slashed with precision and confidence. Never a misstep, never a hesitation. He was no dojo tiger covered in padding and fighting for points. Wherever he had come from, they had a martial arts more complex and dangerous than any she had ever seen. It was like a choreographed dance. In my humble opinion, no film or book has managed to describe a predator in the way the Perrys did. This moment perfectly captures the agility and grace of an expert hunter. Dushanbe is almost balletic in his movements as he effortlessly slays his xenomorph adversaries. Although his injuries are exacerbated, Broken Tusk adds to his xenomorph kill count as he approaches the hive. The authors skillfully describe the protagonist's disadvantage as they write, Dushanbe had gone into 3 nests before this one, but always with fully stocked burners and at least a handful of armed Yautja with him. Not to mention that he felt like a month-old jet turd. His side ached from the drone attack and each deep breath burned somewhere inside. From his experience and the way he felt, the wounds were fairly serious. Well, nothing to be done about it. He wasn't afraid. Blooded warriors seldom were in battle, but he accepted that dying could come easily here. He hoped it would come with honour. The real pity would be that there would be no one to tell the tale. No one except a small woman, assuming she survived as well. They moved forward in the thick dark. From the very start of this mission, not once is Deshande at full health, but seriously wounded, and his injuries are only compounded as the ordeal reaches its climax. Yet somehow, Deshande manages to persevere entering the hive without a fully charged burner and any other Yautja assistance. When inside, Deshande continues his xenomorph killing spree as he slashes with his wrist blades, bludgeons with a burner, and smashes with his staff. Despite all his expertise and wisdom, Deshande does not survive the ordeal and is ultimately tricked into his downfall. When he sees the Queen's headcrest at the top of the stairs, he believes he has the most formidable prey within his sights. Craftily, the Queen ducks Deshande's burner fire, then cleverly produces her unmistakable howl. After sending a drone in her place, Deshande fires his last shot and kills nothing more than the decoy. Broken Tusk prematurely celebrates what he believes is his most successful kill as the Queen arrives on the scene. Completely shocked, Deshande is left isolated to fight the colossal creature with only his staff. Despite his best efforts, Deshande is struck in his injured chest by the Queen's massive tail before having his shoulder torn open by her razor-sharp talons. Completely helpless, Deshande lies defeated until Noguchi manages to close the ship's pressure door, which vacuums shut, decapitating the Queen in the process. In his final act, Deshande gives Noguchi his clan marking by using the deceased Queen's blood to etch the symbol onto her forehead, and it is at this point that he finally succumbs to his injuries. Therefore, Deshande dies the most honourable death, having formed a unique bond with a female human who will now go on to inspire the next generation of Yautja warriors. You may argue that the Deadliest Predator should survive the ordeal, but that is the point. Deshande had survived many ordeals before. He had achieved the rank of elite clan leader and even reached legendary status due to the unprecedented manner in which he killed his prey. In addition to this, dying bravely in Yautja culture is a highly honourable end to one's life. No demise is more fitting to a predator than laughing in the face of death when the Black Warrior approaches. After reading all the Predator literature available, I have finally settled on my top 5. Of course, this is solely based on my opinion and the way I have interpreted the information presented in the range of texts. In regards to my number 1, choosing between Katol and Deshande was extremely difficult and it could have gone either way. I would certainly not argue with anyone who chose Katol as the deadliest. However, in my book, Deshande's durability, fighting skills, awe-inspiring past, and ranking just about edged it. With new Predator text being written all the time, it is entirely possible that my Deadliest Yautja in literature will change. Until then, however, Broken Tusk continues to reign supreme as my Deadliest Predator in the literary universe. Next time, I turn my attention to the popular NECA toyline series as my quest to find the Deadliest Predator continues.